The first slice of lasagna hadn't even hit the plate when my sister stood up and screamed, "She ruined our lives! You all just won't say it, but I will." Everyone at the table froze, forks midair, wine glasses still trembling from the last toast. My cousin Ava's 3-year-old had marinara sauce on her cheeks. My Uncle Jim coughed into his napkin like he hadn't heard it. But he had. They all had. It was supposed to be a family reunion, our first in 6 years. And it was at my parents' house. Well, what used to be mine, if we're being honest. Sunday afternoon, backyard, folding chairs lined up around a rented white tent. Mom was wearing the yellow blouse she always wears when she wants people to think she's more warm than sharp. Dad had his old Ray-Bans on, even though it was cloudy. They were seated at the head of the table, right next to Claire. Claire, who never cooks, never hosts, never lifts a finger unless there's applause waiting at the end of it. I was standing at the far end of the table, next to the folding chair nobody had saved for me, holding a bowl of my homemade rosemary potatoes, still warm, still untouched. Claire pointed at me like I was something on her shoe. She drained this family dry, with her therapy, with her dramatics, always needing help, always acting like a victim. She's the reason Mom and Dad missed my graduation dinner. She's the reason we couldn't afford a real honeymoon. No one stopped her. No one interrupted. Mom pressed her lips together and looked down at her plate like it had suddenly become very interesting. Dad sipped his beer, and I just stood there. I don't remember dropping the bowl, but I heard the shatter. Potatoes, glass, and rosemary all over the grass. A few people gasped, not because of what Claire said, but because the dish broke. Because the damn dish breaking was the most offensive thing that happened, apparently. I looked around the table. No one made eye contact, except for my niece, who blinked at me once and looked away. That was the moment it hit me. This wasn't new. This had been waiting to happen. Claire had always needed a stage, and my family had always been her audience. I was just the spotlight she stood in front of. I looked at Mom one more time, and she actually nodded, like she agreed. And then Claire, smug as ever, raised her glass and said, "Well, I'm just glad we can finally be honest." That was it. No apology. No correction. No, "That's enough, Claire." So I picked up my bag, didn't say goodbye, didn't even walk around the side of the tent. I just walked straight through it. The white tarp caught my shoulder as I pushed it aside. I felt it snap behind me like the last thread of something fraying for years. When I got to my car, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely put the key in the ignition. But I drove. Through 4 towns, through sunset, through silence. I turned off my phone somewhere around 7:30, and when I turned it back on the next morning, there they were, 18 missed calls, from Mom, from Dad, from Claire, but not a single message, not even a text, just silence. And I sat on my bed, staring at my phone like it was a ghost of people still living. And in that silence, one truth came crashing in louder than all the shouting from the day before. They didn't expect me to leave. They expected me to stay and clean the mess, to apologize for being hurt, to serve the damn potatoes and pretend the glass hadn't just split in two. But I didn't. Because I wasn't the one who broke. They were. And this time, I wasn't going to be the one who swept it up. I couldn't sleep that night. Not because of what Claire screamed at me in front of the whole family, but because of how quiet it had all become after, how nobody had stopped her, how my parents looked away, like I was just some bad smell that would drift off if they waited long enough. So I sat there in my little apartment, curled up on the couch with a blanket that still smelled faintly of lemon detergent, and a life that never really belonged to me. I stared out the window, watching headlights sweep past like memories I didn't ask to remember. And I did remember. God, I remembered everything. When I was 8, Claire got the flu the week of her ballet recital. I stayed home from school to help Mom keep her cool. I brought Claire soup, held the thermometer in her mouth. She still cried all day, but when Dad got home that evening, he scooped her up like a hero in a movie and said, "Look at our little angel, pushing through like a champ." He didn't even see me in the hallway. That was the first time I realized something important. Claire didn't have to be well to be loved. She just had to be watched. So I stopped trying to be seen. I just tried to be useful. When I was 12 and our roof started leaking, I researched local charities and found one that helped cover repairs. I wrote the application by hand and mailed it myself. A month later, a check came in the mail. Dad cashed it. Mom cried. Claire got her room repainted with the leftover funds. No one ever asked who sent it. At 15, I got my first job, cleaning tables at the local diner after school. I didn't tell anyone. I just used the tips to buy groceries when Mom said the budget was tight. Sometimes I'd leave receipts on the counter so she wouldn't feel insulted. Other times I'd just say a neighbor gave us extra. No one ever questioned it. I took care of things quietly, because I believed that was how love worked. The quieter your need, the more they might respect you. That never happened, but I kept trying anyway. When I was 17, Claire had her first real heartbreak. She locked herself in her room for 3 days. My parents canceled a family trip to the lake house so they could be close in case she needed to talk. I spent those 3 days cleaning out the attic, sorting bills, reorganizing Mom's closet, anything that felt helpful. By day 4, Claire emerged from her room like a Disney princess reborn, asked if anyone wanted to watch a movie, and Mom rushed to make popcorn like they were celebrating something. No one noticed I hadn't eaten dinner in 2 days. Then came college. Claire didn't get into her top choice. I did. My acceptance letter came with a partial scholarship. Hers didn't. Mom called it bad timing. Dad said, "We're not made of money, sweetheart." So I deferred. Took a job at a local accounting firm. Stayed home to help out while Claire figured things out. She figured them out at a liberal arts school in Vermont. I paid 2 of her tuition payments out of my savings account before they stopped asking and just took it for granted. "You're the reliable one," Mom used to say. Like that was a compliment, but it never felt like one. Not when being reliable meant being invisible. When Dad got diagnosed with a heart condition in my mid-20s, Claire had just moved to California with her new boyfriend. She sent flowers, I sent time, driving to appointments, filling out prescriptions, managing bills. When he got better, he called Claire first. She told him she'd prayed for him every day. He believed her. I believed her too, for years. Believed her when she told my parents I was acting weird for wanting to move out. Believed her when she said my job wasn't real because it didn't have a fancy title. Believed her when she accused me of hoarding attention after I started therapy. Claire had a way of saying things that made people doubt themselves, even if they knew better. And my parents? They loved being convinced. They loved the easy narrative that Claire was misunderstood, fragile, brilliant, but that I was just steady, unfeeling, self-sufficient. They said that once, actually, right after Grandma died. Grandma Elaine was the only one who ever saw me, really saw me. She used to say, "Some people bloom quietly, and those are the ones worth waiting for." She left me a letter in her will. Not money, not property, just a letter. It said, "Don't let them write you out of your own story." I folded that letter 100 times, kept it in my wallet for years. Still have it, taped inside my kitchen cabinet. The ink is faded now, but I can still hear her voice when I read it. And then came the house I helped save from foreclosure after Dad's second surgery. The house I co-signed on because Claire's credit was too low and my parents said they couldn't do it without me. "We'll just need your name on it for a little while," Mom had said. "Just until things stabilize." That was 5 years ago. Since then, I'd paid utilities more times than I could count, paid off the second mortgage, handled the repairs when the plumbing went bad, and yet, I was never really asked what I wanted with that house. I didn't want it forever. I just wanted it to mean something, to mean that I mattered. Instead, it became Claire's castle, her reset space after both her divorces, her backdrop for Instagram, and through all of it, every lie, every minimization, every gathering where I was treated like a stranger in my own life, I still showed up, still tried, still believed that if I just gave a little more, they'd finally see me. Not as the helper, not as the quiet one, but as their daughter, their sister, someone who belonged. And the saddest part? I think a part of me is still waiting for that. Even now. It started with an envelope. Not a call. Not a knock. Just an unmarked envelope on my doormat, heavy with the kind of silence that always comes before something breaks. I knew the handwriting. Dad's, though it had gotten shakier over the years. Inside was a single folded sheet. One sentence, underlined. We've signed the transfer. Claire's the rightful homeowner now. No explanation, no greeting, no, thank you for everything. Just that. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat down on the floor, legs crossed like a kid in story time, and stared at the ceiling as if it would have answers. Because the story they were trying to write me out of? I built half that damn house, paid for every cracked tile, every utility bill Claire forgot, every copay when Dad was too proud to ask for help. The deed had my name, my sweat, my quiet sacrifices, but none of that mattered anymore. Claire needed a fresh start, they said. And apparently, I was just old wallpaper to be stripped off for her next chapter. Still, I didn't move. Not right away. But something inside me did. Not rage, though that would have been easier. It was something colder. A slow freeze in the chest, like a knowing, a tired, steel-edged knowing. So I got up, poured myself a cup of black coffee, and drove across town. I didn't call first. I didn't announce myself. I just parked across the street from the house I used to consider a second home. And there she was, Claire, out front, laughing, barefoot, wearing one of those breezy influencer dresses, and talking to some guy who looked like he took gym selfies for a living. She was holding a wine glass and twirling the keys on her finger like a prop. My keys. The porch still had the cracked tile I fixed with my own hands. The hydrangeas I planted with Mom. The little garden gnome Grandma Elaine gave me, now tucked under the steps like it didn't matter. I didn't get out of the car. I just sat and watched her throw her head back in laughter, her voice ringing out like she was starring in some show where I never got cast. That night, I checked the county records. It was real. The title had changed, transferred with consent. Except it wasn't my consent. It was forged. I had never signed. Not the transfer. Not the power of attorney. Not the fake release letter that was now somehow on file. The betrayal cracked down the center of me like lightning over still water. It wasn't just her. It was all of them. My parents had signed off, had watched it happen, had helped, and not once had they told me. I called Mom, straight to voicemail. Dad? No answer. Claire? Blocked me years ago. I emailed. Nothing. I sent a message through a family group chat that hadn't seen activity in months. No one replied. No one cared. Until the brunch. Claire's birthday. She wanted it classy, so it was held at a private rooftop space downtown. Somehow I got an invitation, either by accident or arrogance. I went. Not for her, for myself. I wore a simple black dress, clean, sharp, nothing flashy. I didn't bring a gift. I brought something heavier, the original deed, the recorded voicemail from Dad, where he'd admitted just weeks before, "We'll just use your name for now. It's easier." And the notarized letter I'd had drawn up by a real estate attorney I paid out of pocket, confirming the fraudulent nature of the transfer. I showed up and waited. I didn't say hello. I didn't hug anyone. I just stood near the back table where the dessert trays were lined up in neat little rows like lies waiting to be served. When the champagne was passed and Claire rose for her toast, I listened. She said she was proud of her journey, of surviving betrayal, of reclaiming what was always meant to be mine. And people clapped. Clapped. Like they hadn't watched me lose myself for this family, brick by emotional brick. So I waited for the silence that always follows too much noise. Then I stepped forward. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask permission. I just said, "That's interesting, Claire, because according to public records, the house was never legally yours." The room froze. Even the jazz trio stopped mid-note. She laughed, too sharp, too high. "What are you talking about?" I held up the paper. "I never signed the transfer. This," I held up the second paper, "is a certified declaration of fraud. Filed with the county this morning. Gasps. Not dramatic ones, just quiet, rippling ones, like the moment someone realizes they're not the hero of their own story anymore. Claire stepped forward, her face red. Why are you doing this? I looked straight at Mom and Dad. Because you already did. Mom reached for my arm. Sweetheart, we didn't want it to come to this. To what? I asked, my voice cracking for the first time. To stealing from me? To pretending I didn't exist while you handed everything over to her like I was some placeholder child? Claire opened her mouth. I didn't let her speak. I laid the flash drive on the table. In this are 5 voicemails, 3 emails, and 1 confession, all pointing to the same thing. You lied. You colluded. And now it's not just family betrayal. It's legal. The air turned brittle. No one moved. No one dared. I turned to walk out, not waiting for applause, not waiting for tears. I didn't need any of that. All I needed was the sound of my own footsteps, firm, deliberate, leaving the party I was never meant to stay in. I heard someone say my name softly behind me. I didn't look back. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't begging them to understand. I was done explaining. The door shut behind me, and I didn't feel grief. I felt clean. I didn't turn back, didn't replay the words. I just walked. For once, without guilt trailing behind me like a second skin. That night, I lit a candle, made tea, sat on the floor and listened to the silence. And just when I thought the silence was all I'd hear for a while, something else knocked. It started with a knock. Not on my door, but in my inbox. Subject line, confidential, urgent legal review. At first I thought it was spam, some algorithm hitting too close to home. But the sender wasn't a stranger. It was a name I hadn't seen in years. Nora Altman, J.D. Nora had been my friend back in high school. We lost touch after she went to Yale. Last I heard, she was a real estate attorney in Manhattan. But the body of the email was brief, almost clinical. Hi. I saw the property transfer on public record. Please call me. Something isn't right. Attached, a single PDF, highlighted and annotated. My name, my birth date, and my forged signature in a form I'd never seen before. And that was the moment I stopped waiting for someone to care. I called her. Her voice was calmer than mine. She explained that the notary listed on the deed had lost their license 4 years ago. The witness signature didn't match up to anyone employed at the courthouse. It was a patch job, sloppy, illegal, and all of it was tied to a rush filing from 2 months prior, one that conveniently landed just after I stopped coming around. I asked her if it was real. She paused, then said gently, "It's real enough to open a case, and it's strong enough to win." We talked for 2 hours. She didn't charge me. She didn't promise revenge. But she said, "If you want this reversed, I'll help, but you'll need to show up. Not just in court, emotionally. They're counting on you being silent." I said, "I've been silent for 30 years. So we built the case. Quietly, deliberately, I dug up every document, every email, every photo of my hand holding the original keys, every utility bill still sent to my name. Even the anniversary photo where Dad had captioned it. Thanks to our daughter who made this house possible. I uploaded voice recordings, one where Mom said, "Claire can't handle responsibility, but you've always managed." And then I handed it all to Nora. She filed the fraud claim, not with drama, with precision. A week later, Claire posted a photo in front of her fireplace, caption, "Healing starts at home." I screenshotted it and sent it to Nora, because now I was documenting too. Then came the summons, and for the first time in my life, I didn't hide. Claire received it the morning of our parents' anniversary dinner, a family gathering I was never invited to anymore, but one they always posted photos of. Happy plates, matching sweaters, crooked candles, my seat always empty. But this year, something changed. Aunt Sylvia called me, whispered like she was afraid the walls would hear. "Sweetheart." Claire ran out crying, said someone's trying to steal her house. "What's going on?" I didn't answer. I just said, Did anyone ask whose name was actually on the deed? She went quiet. Then, oh, just that. Oh, the lawyer's message wasn't just a warning. It was a roadmap. Attached was a scanned letter, unsigned but very real, drafted by my father 2 years ago. A transfer of ownership, from me to them. Only, the signature on it, it wasn't mine. I zoomed in on it. I knew my handwriting better than anyone. Every loop, every dip. This was close, almost surgical, but not quite. It was the R in my first name. That was always the tell. Mine curled inward. The one on that page looped out like a ribbon. I didn't even have to send it to a forensic analyst to know. But I would, just in case. Still, I stared at it for a long time, not because I was shocked, but because I wasn't. I should have felt rage, horror, panic, but all I felt was clarity. This wasn't some accident. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan, executed quietly, confidently, because they truly believed I wouldn't notice, or worse, that I'd notice, and still stay silent. They thought they'd trained me that well. They hadn't counted on me learning to document. I opened the voice recording files, chose the one I'd titled July Claire's Slip. In it, you could hear her talking to Mom in the kitchen. She didn't know I'd left my phone recording on the windowsill. I mean, she's not even using the place, Claire had said. And let's be honest, no one's ever going to marry her. It's not like she's building a future. Mom hadn't stopped her. She just said, "You're right. She owes us this anyway." That was the same week Dad asked me to help clean out the attic, and I found my old journals in a donation pile, pages torn as if someone had tried to read then erase. That was the week I knew. And now, the week I answered back. I printed out everything: emails, deed copies, signature comparisons, attached transcripts of the recordings, hired a forensic document expert. My lawyer prepped an affidavit. The report came back. Signature inconclusive due to suspected tracing. Suspected, but not enough for court yet. Still, it didn't have to be, because it was enough for one more thing. A cease and desist, backed with legal teeth, and a public records review request filed with the county clerk. Once filed, it would trigger a temporary freeze on any sale, rental, or reassignment of the house. But more than that, it would trigger questions. And questions were poison to people who thrived on silence. 2 weeks later, my lawyer invited me to sit in on a virtual meeting with the opposing side's counsel. Claire wasn't on camera, but her lawyer was. Gray hair, sweaty forehead, a smile too tight to trust. He started with pleasantries, then asked, "Is there any reason you feel you're entitled to stall a property transfer that was legally executed 2 years ago?" My lawyer clicked a file, shared screen. "I'd like to walk you through a few things," he said, calm as a breeze. He started with the voice clip, then the deed, then the signature comparison. The opposing lawyer's smile didn't fade, but it did freeze. Then, something unexpected. He turned off his camera. Claire didn't speak, but I did. Only one sentence. "I'm no longer available for their illusion." And then I logged out. Not 10 minutes later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Why are you doing this to us?" it said. I didn't answer, because for once the answer wasn't mine to give. They'd written the story. I was just reading it out loud. 2 days later, a certified envelope arrived. It was from the county clerk. Inside, confirmation of the freeze, and a handwritten note from the clerk herself. "Glad you filed when you did. They tried to list it last Friday." That same afternoon, Claire's social media went quiet. Her realtor took down the post, and I got a call from someone I never expected. Aunt Denise, the one who never looked me in the eye at holidays, the one who once told me I was too sensitive to be around. She left a voicemail. "I'm sorry, I didn't know, I truly didn't." I didn't play it again, didn't save it either, because that moment wasn't about her. It was about me, finally stepping into the part of the story they never thought I'd write. The one where I wasn't the background character. I was the author, and I had more to say. It didn't happen all at once. Justice never arrives with a marching band. It comes in awkward silences, in hushed conversations behind closed doors, in the empty space where arrogance used to be. The freeze order had gone through, the fraud investigation was underway, and for the first time in decades, my name, the one they tried to erase, was the name that mattered. Not because it was louder, but because it was on every document that counted. The house couldn't be sold. Claire's escrow fell through. Her smug caption, "Keys to my future," was now a ghost on the internet, deleted quietly, like none of it had ever happened. But the internet remembers, and so did I. The real fallout started when the county clerk's office contacted my father directly. They asked for clarification on the signature used in the property transfer. He didn't yell, he didn't threaten, he didn't defend, he just hung up. Then I got word from the attorney. They had filed nothing to dispute my claim. No counter, no statement, just silence. And that silence? It was the loudest admission they'd ever made. Claire, who once had a new car every 2 years, sold hers on Craigslist. Her credit was flagged after trying to get a mortgage in another state. And the whispers? They came quickly. One of her old college friends messaged me out of nowhere. She told everyone you gifted her the house that it was always hers. I didn't realize. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. That was the theme now. They finally had to live in the truth I'd carried alone for too long. Mom stopped calling. At first, it was just short voicemails. "Call me when you're less angry." Then it turned into text messages. Just emojis, sad faces, praying hands, as if she could shrink what she did down to pixels and hope I'd forget the weight of it. Dad never reached out, but I heard through Aunt Denise that he stopped going to church. Apparently, the pastor gave a sermon one Sunday on deception, borrowing stories that don't belong to you, and he got up and walked out halfway through. Guilt's funny like that. It leaks out even when you think you've sealed every crack. But the part that surprised me? It wasn't how quickly they unraveled. It was how little satisfaction I felt watching it happen. Because by then, I wasn't chasing their remorse. I was protecting my peace. I changed the locks. Officially updated the deed in public record. Refiled the taxes with my name, just mine. And when a realtor left a flyer in my mailbox advertising a free appraisal, I smiled for the first time in weeks. I didn't call the realtor. I didn't need an appraisal. I already knew what the house was worth, because it wasn't just property anymore. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't crazy, that I hadn't imagined the gaslighting, the manipulation, the quiet punishment for not being the daughter they wanted, even while being the one who carried everything. And they knew it too. Because 2 months later, I got a letter. No return address. Just a typed note. "We shouldn't have done what we did. We were afraid. You seemed so strong, like you didn't need anything. Claire was going through so much, and we thought you'd understand. We're sorry. Mom and Dad." There was no apology for forging my name, for selling a house they never owned, for turning me into a villain at that brunch in front of strangers. Just that vague, brittle, "we thought you'd understand." They always thought that. They mistook endurance for consent. But I didn't reply, because by now, the consequence was the silence. They had to sit with what they'd done. And for once, I didn't rush in to comfort them. Claire lost more than just a house. She lost credibility. Friends started distancing. Old acquaintances shared screenshots of messages she'd sent bragging about the inheritance she never earned. People noticed, people remembered. But I didn't gloat, I just got quieter, focused on building my own peace, room by room. When I finally invited someone over, just a friend from work, I didn't mention the house's history, didn't talk about the legal mess. I just served tea, lit a candle, and said, "I like how the light comes through the window this time of day." They nodded, smiled. "Feels like a home." And that was it. That was the justice. Not in court filings, not in frozen assets, not in seeing them fall, but in knowing I was no longer standing outside my own life, begging to be let in. I was home. The quiet came first. Not the kind you get when people leave a room. Not that hollow, echoing emptiness. This was the kind that settles inside you, softly, without announcement, The kind that doesn't rush you or remind you what time it is. The kind that doesn't demand anything from you at all. I woke up to sunlight pouring through my kitchen window, slanting across the floor in clean gold lines. It lit up the mug in my hand, chipped at the rim, blue glaze faded where my thumb always landed. It was the first cup of coffee in a long time that didn't feel like fuel. It felt like morning. Not another day to brace for, to prepare for, to navigate carefully like walking barefoot over glass. Just a day, my own, mine to ruin or redeem. The house was mine now, fully, finally. Not just on paper, but in presence. It breathed with me. I'd planted a jasmine vine outside my bedroom window 2 weeks ago. It had started to reach. I noticed that, and in noticing that, I noticed me again. I didn't check my phone anymore with a tight chest. I didn't flinch when the doorbell rang. I didn't second-guess the music I played in the evening or the candle I lit just because it made the room feel warmer. There was no grand celebration, no victory parade, just a stillness. One I hadn't earned from winning, but from surviving, and choosing not to carry their shame one step further. Sometimes, healing doesn't look like scars fading. Sometimes it looks like learning to make a grocery list again without writing everything twice in case someone didn't like your choices. Sometimes it's letting your feet touch the floor in the morning without mentally rehearsing every conversation you might have to defend yourself in. Sometimes it's in the smallest things, like not apologizing when you laugh too loud in your own kitchen, or buying the dress you've always liked but never thought you deserved. I hung that dress up by the door. It's not even a fancy one, just linen, soft cream, a little flowy, but I picked it because I liked it, because no one told me it was too much or not practical. I hung it where I could see it every day, not as a prize, but as a promise. I don't know if they still talk about me. I don't check. The thing is, I used to want closure, a confession, a grand apology with the right words and maybe even tears. But now I understand that closure is a door you get to close, from your side. It doesn't matter if the people on the other side keep banging. You can choose not to open it again, and you still get to walk away. If you're watching this, and your story looks anything like mine, if you were the one who held the family together until your arms gave out, and still got blamed when things fell apart, if you've ever stood at the edge of a table full of people you once called home and realized they never saved you a seat, I just want to say this: you're not crazy, you're not selfish, you're not too sensitive or too cold or too distant, you're just tired. Tired of carrying a weight they pretend doesn't exist, and you're allowed to set it down. You don't owe anyone your silence, your spine, your savings, your soul. You're allowed to build something that's just for you, even if they call it betrayal. You're allowed to heal in private. And if you're still in the thick of it, still checking your phone for one kind word that never comes, still standing in rooms where your name sounds like a punchline, I hope this reminds you, you're not alone. There's a sunrise waiting on the other side of goodbye, and when it comes, may you have your favorite coffee, soft music, and enough peace in your heart to hear yourself say, this is mine. You're not alone. There's a sunrise waiting on the other side of goodbye. And when it comes, may you have your favorite coffee, soft music, and enough peace in your heart to hear yourself say, this is mine. If you've ever been the one pushed aside while others were protected, if you've ever left a room just to protect your own peace, if you've ever held your tongue while they tore you down, I see you, and I hope this story held your hand, even just for a moment. Leave a comment below if you've ever felt like the forgotten one. Share this video with someone who might need to be reminded. Their voice matters. And if you're new here, subscribe. We tell stories for those who were told to stay quiet, because silence doesn't heal. But truth sets us free.